Perfect. So the purpose of today's webinar is to provide an overview of New Brunswick Power's ARC-100 project and to provide information to answer questions such as who is the CNSC and what does the CNSC do? What is the New Brunswick Power ARC-100 project? What is the licensing review process? And how are Indigenous nations and communities and the public involved? So now I will pass it over to Sarah Eaton, who will provide an overview of the CNSC, where she'll explain who we are and what we do.
Okay, thanks so much, Lance. I'll assume anyone can hear me, otherwise I'll speak otherwise. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. The CNSC is an evidence-based regulator. We use laws and regulations to protect the environment, the health and safety of Canadians, and national security. The CNSC was originally called the Atomic Energy Control Board, which was created in 1946, and we became the CNSC in the year 2000. Our mandate, as described in the Nuclear Safety and Control Act, which is the main legislation that we use to regulate, describes what the CNSC is responsible for. The CNSC is the only authority in Canada that regulates nuclear energy, nuclear substances, nuclear information, and nuclear equipment. Essentially, the CNSC has a mandate that covers three things. The first is to regulate the use of nuclear energy and materials to protect the health, safety, and environment in Canada. The second is to implement Canada's international commitments on the peaceful use of nuclear energy. The third is to communicate and share information to the public and Indigenous groups, Indigenous nations and communities. We don't promote nuclear activities, but it's our job to make sure that these activities are regulated so they are safe. Next slide, please. The CNSC regulates or provides oversight for all nuclear-related activities in Canada, as shown here on the slide. For example, the CNSC is responsible for overseeing the mining of uranium, the transportation of radioactive materials, the production of medical isotopes, the manufacturing of uranium fuel bundles that are used in Canada's nuclear power plants, and of course, nuclear waste, and nuclear power plants. This also includes small modular reactors. The CNSC has issued over 2,000 licenses for activities ranging from the administration of nuclear medicines to the operation of nuclear power plants. Next slide, please. Decisions to grant a license are made by an independent commission made up of a panel of experts. The commission is arm's length from the government. The commission has up to 7 members at any given time, and they're appointed by governor and council based on their qualifications and expertise. You can see the current members of the commission on this slide. The commission makes its decisions transparently, guided by rules of procedure. Interested parties and members of the public are able to participate in public commission meetings and hearings, which are webcast live and often held in facility host communities to make them accessible as possible to local residents. The commission provides extensive reasons for its decisions, which are based on information and evidence that includes public input, as well as the recommendations of expert CNSC staff. Decisions, hearing transcripts, webcast archives, and other documentation are publicly available on the CNSC website. The commission is supported by more than 800 scientific, technical, and professional staff. That's us. The employees review applications for licenses according to regulatory requirements and recommendations to the commission. Next slide, please. This slide shows the locations of the CNSC offices in Canada. We have staff located across the country. Our headquarters is located in Ottawa, and there are site offices at each nuclear power plant, including at the Point Lepreau generating station. Next slide, please. As a regulator, the CNSC is responsible for establishing a licensing and compliance system to ensure that all organizations who use or possess nuclear substances and radiation devices do so in accordance with the license. and that regulated parties have safety and security provisions in place that ensure compliance with regulatory requirements. This ensures that licensees are directly responsible for managing regulated activities in a manner that protects the health, safety, security, the environment, and conforms to Canada's domestic and international obligations on the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Through this licensing and compliance system, the CNSC ensures that regulated parties are informed about regulatory requirements and provide guidance on how to meet requirements while verifying they are and will continue to be met. When doing all of this, the CNSC makes independent, objective, and risk-informed decisions. It's important to mention that this regulatory philosophy aligns with the International Atomic Energy Agency safety fundamentals. Next slide, please. So let's move on to New Brunswick Power's ARC-100 project. Next slide, please. New Brunswick Power's ARC-100 project is for the potential deployment of one small modular reactor at the existing Point Lepreau site. In June of 2023, New Brunswick Power submitted a license to prepare site application for one ARC-100 SMR. New Brunswick Power's proposed application also requires a provincial environmental impact assessment under the Government of New Brunswick Environmental Impact Assessment process. Next slide, please. In Canada, the decision on what type of electrical generation to use is a provincial decision. New Brunswick Power has selected or chosen the ARC-100 technology for its project. The technology selected is a 100 megawatt sodium-cooled fast reactor, which uses a metallic uranium alloy fuel. The reactor will use sodium as a coolant, which is different than the heavy water which is used for coolant in the traditional CANDU reactors that are currently operating in Canada. As you've heard, the CNSC is Canada's nuclear regulator. CNSC staff have been looking at the ARC-100 design via an optional pre-licensing process where vendors and designers engage under a service agreement. This is known as a vendor design review. This review is an opportunity for both the CNSC and the vendor to engage and discuss on certain topics where the CNSC provides feedback on the vendor's efforts to address Canadian regulatory requirements and to identify any potential fundamental barriers to licensing early in the process. Through the vendor design review process, CNSC staff have been able to develop an understanding of the vendor, in this case, the ARC Clean Energy Canada, and its design, and to identify any potential regulatory issues. Next slide, please. To better understand where New Brunswick Power's ARC-100 project is in the whole licensing process, here's a visual that depicts the 5 licensing phases of a nuclear facility in Canada. The Class 1 Nuclear Facilities Regulation allows for separate or combined licenses for each of the 5 phases, starting at site preparation, going all the way towards decommissioning and release from CNSC regulatory control. As we mentioned, the application submitted by New Brunswick Power is the license prepare site phase, which is the first licensing phase. Next slide, please. The license application by New Brunswick Power was received by the CNSC at the end of June of 2023. We verified the contents of the application and are currently beginning the process of assessing the license submission. Over the next few years, CNSC staff will work to bring the application to the Commission for a licensing decision through a transparent hearing process that's open to the public. Tentatively, this would be in a few years, and only after the outcome from the provincial environmental impact assessment work being performed by the province of New Brunswick. Speaking of environmental impact assessments, New Brunswick Power also submitted an environmental impact assessment registration document to the New Brunswick Department of Environment and Local Government on June 30th of 2023. On August 3rd of 2023, the New Brunswick Environment and Climate Change Minister announced that the proposed ARC-100 project would be required to undergo a comprehensive environmental impact assessment review. Proponents are required to follow this review process when the provincial minister suspects project impacts may be significant, or when the minister decides that more study is needed to further assess the potential impacts. Next slide, please. We'll move on now to the regulatory review process for New Brunswick Power's project. I'm going to pass the presentation on to one of our environmental review experts, Kendra.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Kendra Warnock, and I am an Environmental Review Officer at the CNSC. All right, so NB Power's submission will now undergo a technical review. The CNSC's assessment of a license application is a multi-step process, as shown by the graphic on the slide. Information submitted in support of an application must demonstrate that the proposed safety and control measures will meet or exceed regulatory requirements and CNSC expectations. As part of the review, the CNSC will request expertise from relevant federal departments, for example, those responsible for species at risk, fish and fish habitat, noise, and the transportation of dangerous goods. The CNSC may also request expertise from the province and third parties, such as academics or international experts. Examples of topics covered in technical assessments include management systems, radiation protection programs, conventional emergency preparedness, among others. If CNSC staff conclude that an application is not complete or not satisfactory, the proponent will be asked to submit additional information and/or revise the documents. This technical review process continues until staff are satisfied that all requirements are met. Next slide, please. The CNSC evaluates how well licensees meet regulatory requirements and CNSC expectations for the performance of programs in 14 safety and control areas, or SCAs. Here on this slide, you can see the SCAs which are applicable to the license to prepare site application. So you might notice that there are less than 14 on this slide. Since the application is only for the preparation of a site and there are no nuclear substances involved, so not all SCAs are applicable at this point in the project. These SCAs cover all technical areas of regulatory oversight and are used throughout the CNSC's core processes. Each SCA addresses an aspect of the overall safety profile of a proposed set of activities. The SCA framework provides a common set of safety and control terms to ensure consistent reviews, assessments, recommendations, and reporting. Next slide, please. So here is a list of regulations and regulatory documents that the submission will be assessed against. Just like any other nuclear power plant, small modular reactors are subject to the General Nuclear Safety and Control Regulations, as well as the Class 1 Nuclear Facilities Regulations. The CNSC has a suite of regulatory documents, also called Reg Docs, which guide applicants through the licensing process and ensure compliance. These Reg Docs contain details on safety principles, objectives, and requirements for compliance. Reg Docs also contain guidance on how requirements may be met. Next slide, please. So a license will only be issued by the Commission when the applicant is deemed qualified to carry out the activity that the license will authorize, has demonstrated that they will protect the health and safety of persons as well as the environment, has demonstrated that they will maintain national security, and has confirmed that they will adhere to international obligations to which Canada has agreed. Next slide, please. So as of today, NB Power has submitted a partial application for a license to prepare site. So while the application is mostly complete, there is some outstanding documentation that is expected to be submitted between now and late 2025. Moving ahead, CNSC staff will begin conducting a technical assessment of the information received. Further documentation received will be assessed as it comes in. This information will then be used to produce a Commission member document with the results of the regulatory review and recommendations of CNSC staff to the Commission. The Commission member document will also include CNSC staff's environmental protection review. Next slide, please. NB Power's proposed ARC-100 will be required to undergo two different types of environmental review. The first being a provincial comprehensive environmental impact assessment by the province of New Brunswick, as well as an environmental protection review by CNSC staff. For the provincial environmental impact assessment, or EIA, CNSC staff will be providing technical support to the province of New Brunswick as members of the Technical Review Committee. So we will be providing comments on NB Power's draft EIA report, as well as other supporting documents throughout the review process. In December of 2022, the Canadian Minister of Environment and Climate Change responded to a designation request for the ARC-100 project and concluded that the project did not warrant designation pursuant to subsection 9(1) of the Impact Assessment Act. The minister determined that the designation of the project was unwarranted since the legislative processes that apply to the proposed project already provide a framework to address the potential adverse effects and impacts, as well as concerns raised by Indigenous nations and communities and the public. In March of 2023, a second designation request was received, which asked for the original designation decision by the minister to be reevaluated. In August of 2023, the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada responded to the request, stating that since there had been no material change to the ARC-100 project and no new significant information regarding potential adverse effects since the assessment of the first designation request, there was no basis to revisit the minister's decision. The proposed ARC-100 project will also undergo an Environmental Protection Review, or EPR, by CNSC staff as per the Nuclear Safety and Control Act in accordance with the licensing technical review. CNSC staff's findings from the EPR are going to be presented in an EPR report, which will be appended to the commission member document ahead of any public commission hearings for the ARC-100 project. Since CNSC staff will be participating in the provincial EIA and providing technical support throughout the process, we wouldn't want to make our licensing recommendation to the commission until the province's provincial process is complete. So even though the provincial EIA decision and the commission's licensing decision are independent, the commission will wait until the provincial process is complete and will take in the information from the EIA into consideration when making their licensing decision. Next slide, please. So we're now going to provide an overview of Indigenous and public consultation and engagement for the proposed ARC-100. And for this, I will turn the presentation over to my colleague, Adam Levine.
Thanks so much, Kendra. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well. And now we're just going to talk a little bit about our consultation and engagement work at the CNSC. So my name is Adam Levine. I'm the team lead for Indigenous consultation and funding programs. And at the CNSC, we're an open and transparent regulator. And we aim to promote the transparency of our staff's technical review processes, and we engage with the public and Indigenous nations and communities through regular and consistent status updates and project bulletins, social media posts and updates on the CNSC's website, as well as topical discussions with two-way dialogue with communities such as online webinars like this, one-on-one sessions, and CNSC staff participating in public events, as well as through contextualizing the project through videos and written frequently asked questions to make sure you get all the information you need about our regulatory work and the projects. Next slide. The CNSC is Canada's nuclear regulator and life cycle regulator, engages and consults with Indigenous nations and communities over the life of any nuclear project. As an agent of the Crown, the CNSC is committed to upholding the honor of the Crown and fulfilling its duty to consult and accommodate obligations for decisions and activities that could potentially impact the exercise of Indigenous or treaty rights. CNSC staff, we work closely with Indigenous nations and communities and understand if any potential adverse impacts on Indigenous or treaty rights and interests may arise from a proposed project, and work collaboratively to address those concerns to the greatest extent possible. The CNSC is committed to building long-term relationships with Indigenous nations and communities with interest in nuclear facilities that we regulate. We strive to engage in meaningful, ongoing discussions to address concerns through the whole life cycle of a project and to support participation in our processes. Additionally, the CNSC requires licensees to engage with Indigenous nations and communities early and throughout the life cycle of their project. Our expectations and guidance for licensees and proponents around Indigenous engagement is outlined in Reg Doc 3.2.2, Indigenous engagement. Next slide, please. Our participant funding program was established to enhance the participation of Indigenous nations and communities, the public, and stakeholders in the CNSC's regulatory processes, including intervening in commission hearings. General information about the participant funding program, how to apply, and current PFP funding opportunities can be found at the link provided on our slide here, and also on our website. The CNSC staff are currently working on the details regarding the PFP opportunities for the ARC-100 license application and related regulatory review process. And we'll be providing more information soon when available around the funding opportunities. Similarly, the approach to commission proceedings will be decided at a later date and communicated through a notice of hearing which will be posted on the CNSC's website and distributed via email. In the notice of hearing, there will also be instructions on how to submit an intervention to participate in the process. Additional opportunities for participation will be announced as we progress through the regulatory process and will be announced through our social media pages and our info subscribers list. We encourage everyone to get involved and be heard. If you want to get in touch with us, we have a general inquiries inbox and an inbox for project-specific questions. May also can be added to our subscribers list through our website, where you'll receive emails with important project updates such as hearing notices, information on webinars, and also workshops. Next slide. Lastly, updates and important news will be regularly shared over our social media pages and channels, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And so be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss anything that we're putting out there about this project or anything else that the CNSC is doing. And I'll now turn the presentation back to, I think we're going to be doing some more polling questions or to whoever's managing that. So thank you so much, everyone, and happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much to both Adam and Kendra for walking through that. I realized I didn't introduce myself, so I will. My name is Sarah Eaton. I am the director for the Advanced Reactor Licensing Division, so really glad to be here.